Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the very kind opportunity to come and speak with you today about the Texas Heart Institute. It's really, we were just talking before the symposium started, the Perfusion School is an important part of our educational portfolio. I think this is a wonderful meeting. I'll apologize up front that I won't be able to stay for the whole meeting, but I'll try to catch the parts that I'm missing either virtually or watch them in the recorded sessions. I like to take this time at the end of an academic year to sort of reflect a little bit on where we are as a Texas Heart Institute. And many of you who've been in my presentations over the last several weeks will have seen some of these slides. I'll try to repackage it just a little bit. But I think it's a nice review of the kinds of work that we're doing. And I think it sets the stage for where we plan to be as THI. I don't have any disclosures related to this talk, except that the Texas Heart Institute employs me. So there's a rich history at the Texas Heart Institute, and I have tried to boil it down in my mind into some words that I think will resonate with those of you who either trained here or who work here. And it started with Dr. Cooley and how he set the stage for us at THI. But I think that the Texas Heart Institute is grounded in three principles: in excellence, in innovation, and the word that I really like is impact. And what I hope to do in the next few minutes is show you how I believe the Texas Heart Institute is having an impact on cardiovascular health and cardiovascular medicine in the world. And there's some of the luminaries of the Texas Heart Institute over the years that are shown in the pictures in the slide. Some of you may know that we changed the name of Texas Heart Institute last year to the Texas Heart Institute. And that is to distinguish us from other heart institutes in the state. It adds a little bit of exclusivity that I believe that this organization has earned over 6 decades of intense work in cardiovascular disease. And we've changed our vision and our missions. And I think that these are very forward-thinking. They align with what many of us feel we do each day. But our vision going forward will be bringing the future of cardiovascular health to life. And our mission will be to improve cardiovascular health today through trailblazing research, thought leadership, education, and patient care. And you've seen some of these values in the past, but we've added two, which we thought were critically important and characterized not only the history of the Heart Institute, but what we aspire to be going forward. We added curiosity and we added a pioneering spirit. I think that that really embodies the people that come to work every day at THI and are innovating and are thinking about new ways of doing things and are willing to take a chance and think differently than other people and to change paradigm. And that's really the history of THI. There are some strategic imperatives that go along with that kind of an organization. And at the risk of reading to you, I want to just highlight a couple of these. First of all, I think that there's an experience that we want to create for people who interact with the Texas Heart Institute. Doesn't matter whether you're a patient, whether you're somebody who's collaborating with us on a research project, whether you're a student coming to learn in the School of Perfusion Technology. There's a certain aura about the Texas Heart Institute that we want people to feel when they come and visit with us. We are committed to an unwavering focus on quality. And I'll show you some data about that in just a little bit. We want to reestablish THI as a nationally recognized brand for excellence and programs of distinction. We want to bring in outstanding physicians and scientists. We want to have our training programs grounded in the values that have founded the Texas Heart Institute over the last 6 decades, and make sure that the people who work here have a very fulfilling, enriching experience in their professional lives. I worked with someone once who said, what you really want to do is take the pebbles out of people's shoes. Make it easy for them to work here. Make them excited about coming. And that's the kind of experience we want for the people who work here. We're really excited about the clinical program that we have. As many of you know, we formed an employed practice of the Texas Heart Institute for the first time in 2020. We brought two private practices together of only cardiologists, and that group is growing quickly. And the people who joined the group are shown in this slide. This is just in the last 12 months. And I'm proud to say that our colleagues from the Surgical Associates of Texas joined the Texas Heart Institute employed practice last year. So we're very happy to have both cardiologists and cardiac surgeons now working under the moniker of the Texas Heart Institute. And the clinical programs are growing nicely. We're seeing more patients. We're having more impact on the care of people, again, grounded in the foundations of innovation and excellence that characterize the Texas Heart Institute over the last several decades. I told you we're going to continue to focus on quality, and we're moving from looking at process to looking at outcomes. So many of the quality measures that you are aware of and that we work in every day are things like, if someone has coronary artery disease, are they on a statin? And I would say that's the first step in a quality journey. But the real question that we should all be asking is, are they on the right dose of a statin? Is the statin having the effect that you intend? And are you seeing the reductions in cardiovascular morbidity and mortality that you would anticipate? We went back and surveyed the patients in our practice who have coronary artery disease who are being treated with a statin. And it turns out that we're in the 90th percentile in getting people's LDL cholesterol down to a target level with our therapies. I think more than the story about this particular metric, I think what we're talking about is driving the quality conversation nationally. And we want to be in a position where we can say, we know what our quality looks like. We're no longer measuring process. We're measuring outcome. Show us what your data is if you think that you're better than us. And so I think this is a really exciting philosophical move and pushing the quality conversation, and we hope to be doing that nationally. And if you look at how our patients feel about the experience that they have at the Texas Heart Institute, that's shown in the graph on the right. I'll highlight for you that that's truncated at 70%. People scoring us at the very highest level of this patient satisfaction score. And you can see that we're scoring in many of these domains above the 95th percentile. And I don't want to trivialize the fact that we continue to innovate clinically. And this is, as many of you know, especially the work here, this is Dr. Liao, who is a national leader in the field of robotic cardiac surgery. And what I've shown you on the left side of the slide is a patient that I sent him. This was a young man who was an Olympic qualifier in distance running. And he noted that he began to have more difficulty exercising. And he was getting breathless and he was getting fatigued. And he went to another hospital and they said, oh, you've got a little mass on your tricuspid valve. I think we just should watch that. When we got to look at the images, it actually was not a little mass at all. In fact, it was probably obstructing his tricuspid inflow while he was exercising. So Dr. Liao and his team in the operating room, with some of you, I suspect, resected that mass robotically. He had a very short stay in the hospital and he's back to running because of this. Jennifer Cozart, one of the Texas Heart Institute's cardiac surgeons, is very interested in applying new surgical approaches to the management of atrial fibrillation via the convergent procedure, a procedure that's done through a laparoscopic incision just below the xiphoid, where she's taking a customized instrument and ablating the posterior wall of the left atrium. And at the same time, she's able to clip the left atrial appendage to reduce the risk for having stroke. And a couple of weeks after this procedure is done, a cardiologist goes in and does a quick touch-up on the endocardial surface. But the data from the clinical trial suggests that this is a far superior approach in eliminating atrial fibrillation relative to endocardial ablation alone. And for those of you who work here and who train here, I just want to reinforce that we continue to care for some of the sickest people in the country. I think many of you who are in the OR feel this. The ejection fractions are dropping, the comorbidities are going up, and the data actually supports this. One of the metrics that we use to measure severity of illness is case mix index. It captures not only the primary condition, but the comorbidity. And you can see in the slide that Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center has the third highest case mix index of any hospital in the country, only behind the Cleveland Clinic and Keck and USC Hospital in Los Angeles. So what you're feeling every day in our operating rooms and in our wards is actually borne out by the data. And we're happy to take on those cases because of the expertise that we have here at the THI. We also continue to be recognized for our quality at the hospital. As you know, since the US News and World Report rankings were started, we've been ranked as a high-performing cardiovascular center. And just this year, we received a new accolade from the American College of Cardiology as a national heart care center of excellence. And the criteria for that are shown at the bottom of the slide. But it demonstrates a systematic approach and commitment to quality care for the patients who come to see us. So I think this intersection of providing care to the sickest people and being committed to quality will result in us in a remarkable organization that becomes nationally recognized in this space. So I want to turn a little bit now and focus on some of our research initiatives. And many people have asked, can you help us understand better the research portfolio at the Texas Heart Institute? And we've never really looked at it in the way that's shown in the slide, but I think that there are several key domains of our research portfolio and our research programs. One is a longstanding interest and focus on the failing heart. And this was really, you can go back all the way to the early days of THI when Dr. Cooley performed the first successful heart transplant in the United States. Our origins and our commitment to the failing heart go back that far. And we have several laboratories that are dealing with the failing heart, approaching it from different perspectives, and those are shown in the slide. We also have a long-standing commitment to innovations in interventional cardiology and in surgical technique, and we have laboratories that are working in that space. We have a drug development team upstairs, and I'll tell you a story about them in just a minute, but they've done some really interesting work. A group of people focused on cardiac arrhythmias and specifically ventricular arrhythmias, some focus on valvular heart disease, and an important initiative that's gone on, driven by THI in population health, particularly looking at the health of women in the city of Houston. It's one of the largest health databases that's really well characterized of women's cardiovascular health in a very diverse city in the United States. And what I've shown you in the three green boxes are where we intend to focus in the next couple of years. We believe that there are some important opportunities for recruitment in the space of structural heart disease, the percutaneous management of valvular disease. And we're going to make some investments in health data sciences. The idea that you can take information in registries and you can take information from the electronic health record and begin to answer important questions in cardiovascular health. I'll tell you, many of you may not even know this, but one of the legacies that was left for me when I got here was one of the largest institutional databases of any place in the country. We have a database of 188,000 people, 300,000 hospital admissions, 125,000 heart catheterizations, 30,000 cardiac operations. And the ability to take that data and begin to answer and understand important questions in cardiovascular health will be pivotal in putting THI, sort of back on the forefront of scientific discovery. I know Dr. Elgalad's going to spend some time on this, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to highlight the important work that continues to go on in the basement of Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center and our large animal laboratory. The Bivacor Total Artificial Heart Development Program has been housed down there for probably about a decade. The cow that you see on the right that I think you just saw walking on the treadmill doesn't have a heart. He's being supported by one of these total artificial hearts. And interestingly, this device has now completed preclinical testing and is they're getting ready to submit their documents to the FDA to begin first in human trials. Yixin Wang has taken this legacy of mechanical circulatory support to a very different level. Dr. Wang, in conjunction with Dr. Frazier, are miniaturizing continuous flow pumps to be able to fit in pediatric patients and to fit in adults with congenital heart disease. Two groups of patients that oftentimes don't have an option for mechanical support because the devices that we use today are too large. I'm happy to tell you that Yashin has, in the last 12 months, has gotten 3 peer-reviewed, nationally funded grants to continue this work. And Dr. Elgalad and his colleagues down in the surgical laboratory are doing some remarkable work in conjunction with industry partners. At the top left of this slide, they're working with a company that's using 3D printed scaffolding to recreate organs and fusing them with cells. At the bottom on the left is a new ventricular assist device that's being developed in Mexico and is being tested here at the Texas Heart Institute. And this canister that you see in the middle of the slide is a new device that's being tested to preserve organs so that they can be shipped farther for organ transplantation. So the work in this sort of preclinical VAD space and the surgical and interventional cardiology space is rich and continues. Dr. Jim Martin is approaching the failing heart by taking on gene therapy approaches. And Dr. Martin and his laboratory have identified a stop signal. It's a gene that stops cardiac myocytes from dividing. And he's come up with a gene therapy that inhibits that so that your own cardiac myocytes can begin to divide again. So you can imagine, in someone who's had a myocardial infarction, that you might be able to repopulate your heart with your own cells using a gene therapy approach. And over on the right side of the slide, he's taken some of those gene therapy approaches and applied them to angiogenesis. What you're seeing are mice who've had their lower extremity arteries ligated. The mouse on the right has had a therapy applied which grows new blood vessels into that limb. The mouse on the left still has an ischemic hind limb. And you can see the difference in exercise performance. So in addition to mechanical support, we're focused on gene therapies that will improve human health. And Camila Hochman-Mendez has continued the work of the Texas Heart Institute in regenerative medicine. The heart that's on the left, this white-looking heart, is a heart that's been put on a rig and the cells have been washed off with a detergent. And so this is the sort of the fibrous skeleton, if you will, of a heart that has no cells on it. And what Dr. Hochman-Mendez has done is then taken stem cells and infused them down the coronary arteries. And you can see that she and I argue about this a little bit. She says, look, the heart's beating. I say, look, the heart's twitching. But it's sort of remarkable that the heart, we're beginning to see some organized contraction in these hearts. And you can imagine that this futuristic approach to healing hearts could be clinically applicable at some point in the future. The other thing I want to tell you about Dr. Hochman-Mendez is she just got a wonderful NIH grant to continue this work. But her laboratory is 90% female scientists. And I'm just so incredibly proud of that group of people. They're doing amazing work, and I think serve as a shining light for what we hope to be able to do to increase the diversity of scientists focused on cardiovascular medicine. Mehdi Razavi in one of the EP labs has developed an electroconductive hydrogel that can be injected retrograde in the coronary sinus. It does not obstruct blood flow, but can be used as a pacing medium. So instead of us putting 2 wires in the heart and pretending that that somehow recapitulates normal cardiac conduction, this actually would be much more would be much more of a normal conduction pathway for electricity. It would cause the heart to contract in a much more normal way. And his hypothesis is, particularly in damaged myocardium, that you would sort of be able to work around some of the scars, so you may see less ventricular arrhythmias. And then I want to tell you about 2 other research programs. One is another stem cell experience. This is Dr. Emerson Perrin on the top right of the slide, who for decades at the Texas Heart Institute has been interested in applying stem cells to manage heart failure. And last year, he published the DREAM-HF trial, a trial that was an international trial using stem cells in people who have heart failure. And what Emerson was able to show for the first time is that it's really the patients who have elevated markers of inflammation that benefit from the therapy. And that these Kaplan-Meier curves here in the middle of the slide demonstrate that the people who had markers of inflammation had less myocardial infarction and less subsequent stroke than people who had normal markers of inflammation. So he's developing through this clinical trial, I think, a real deep understanding of pathobiology and how stem cells work. And I think this will frame the conversation about future trials with stem cell therapy. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight the drug development team. This was a really interesting series of experiments that's a great example of how you follow the science. So our drug development team was working on a molecule that could be added to stem cell therapy to make the cells stick inside the organ. And what they realized was that that molecule could also make inflammatory cells stick to a target. So this could be, for example, a vaccine adjuvant. You could administer it with the COVID vaccine or the influenza vaccine. And people are working on vaccines against Chagas disease. And it would increase the efficacy of that. But the other thing that was really fascinating, if you stop and think about it, think about the immune therapies that are being used in cancer now, where we're training people's own immune systems to attack tumors. And it turns out that the molecule that they developed seems to increase the efficacy of immune therapy. And this work was out-licensed to a company called Seven Hills Pharma. They just got a $13 million grant from the state of Texas to study this new molecule as an adjunct immune therapy in drug-resistant melanoma. So I think the Texas Heart Institute also is continuing to follow the science and having impacts on non-cardiovascular disease. Science isn't complete without publishing results. I'm happy to tell you that we continue to be a prolific organization, publishing more than 475 papers in 2022, many of them ending up in high-impact journals. And our website has continued to innovate. We have almost 9 million visitors a year go to our website, looking at 50 million pages of information. And one part of our website is a patient education section that has hundreds of pages of clearly written patient information to empower our patients with an understanding of their cardiovascular disease. And one of the things we decided we would take on this year is translating it to other languages besides English and Spanish. And what we ended up working with a company that has a neural network of artificial intelligence that not only, it doesn't translate one word at a time, which ends up being kind of, you end up with very unusual translations that way, but it looks at phrases and sentences and translates based on that. And we've now just launched the website with available in 104 languages. And our website traffic is up by 300% since we did that. And finally, I want to just make a quick mention because of the School of Perfusion Technology, what we're thinking about education. This is how I learned. Looking around in the audience, there are a few of you who look a lot like me, and you probably learned the same way. But this is how people learn today. It's very different. People learn electronically. We closed our library because I never saw anybody in there. People learn electronically. They're not going and checking out books. They're not looking at textbooks. It's all online. People learn in small bites, not in, sitting in classrooms for days and days. They learn in teams, not individually. And so we're beginning to think about how we restructure some of our educational programs to really leverage what we've learned about education so that we can update our teaching program. So I'll just summarize this way. The Texas Heart Institute's an established leader in cardiovascular care outcomes, research, and education. We've got some new facilities that I didn't talk about today over in the Cannon Tower, which really provide the latest in diagnostic patient-centered approaches. Our research programs and professional staff are solving some of the most complex challenges in cardiovascular disease, but we're always focused on translating discovery to patient care. Our training programs continue to do very well, and we're going to continue to innovate in the ways we teach. We're going to continue to increase the impact of THI. I'm honored, Deb, that you invited me to kick off the meeting. Thank you very much. I wish all of you a wonderful meeting over the next couple of days, and I look forward to learning with you.